What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to talk about one of the biggest news stories in trading card games that we've seen in a long time. Or maybe it's all going to end up being nothing. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, Upper Deck, who are a card company who have done various things over the years, are suing Ravensburger for essentially stealing Lorcana. And this could be a very, very, very big deal indeed. Here's what Upper Deck have said. Upper Deck sues Ravensburger over stolen game. At Upper Deck, we take pride in the creative choices made to design and develop our games, collectibles, and memorabilia. We are suing Ravensburger and a previous Upper Deck game designer who have stolen and copied an original game we developed to repackage and market as Lorcana. We'll get there in a minute, but we've seen the complaint. It is Ryan Miller, one of the principal designers of Lorcana, to which they are referring. We invested significant time and resources to develop a new and novel trading card game. Our current leadership values the importance of protecting intellectual property of both Upper Deck and its licensors. That's a quote there from Jason Mishera, the president of Upper Deck, who went on to say, "We encourage competition in the industry, but also strongly believe in playing by the rules to ensure the gaming community benefits from the different creative choices by each manufacturer." So basically, what they're alleging here is that Disney Lorcana is just a reskinned version of a game that was developed by Upper Deck. But this is where it gets interesting. If we have a look at the complaint, plaintiff, the Upper Deck company, complains and alleges against defendants Ryan Miller, told ya, Ravensburger, and that's basically the defendants in the case. But here's what they said. Upper Deck seeks to protect its intellectual property from premeditated theft by Miller. On a work-for-hire basis, Upper Deck engaged Miller as lead game designer to develop a major proprietary trading card game for Upper Deck called Rush of Icor. I don't know exactly how that's pronounced, that's how I'm saying it. After over a year of developing Rush of Icor alongside Upper Deck, Miller terminated his contract with Upper Deck and either before termination or just after, began working for defendant Ravensburger, a direct competitor, because they of course both develop trading card games. At Ravensburger, Miller transported his work product on Rush of Icor, knowing such work product was owned solely by Upper Deck, into a trading card game called Disney Lorcana. This trading card game has remarkable, uncanny similarities to Upper Deck's Rush of Icor. So basically what they're alleging here is that they hired Ryan Miller to develop this new game, Ryan Miller did the work on the game, and then went and just used that to make Disney Lorcana. And essentially what he did was reskin the work he did for Rush of Icor for Upper Deck, and that is what became Disney Lorcana. And they are alleging a bunch of different things, and I mean a bunch of different things. They are complaining about breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, inducing breach of a written contract, negligent interference with prospective economic relations, constructive trust, conversion, and unfair business practices. You don't need to know what all of those mean. Basically, when you put in a complaint like this, you put in everything that you can think of so that, in the hope that one of them sticks. But essentially, the complaint here is they hired Ryan Miller to make this game, Ryan Miller made the game for them, and then just turned around and gave this to Ravensburger. It turned into Disney Lorcana, and they're not terribly happy. One of the important points from this, and this was said in the complaint, when you do this work for hire, like Miller did for Upper Deck, you don't own the work, Upper Deck does. That's a standard contractual thing. They contract you to make it, but everything you make is owned by them. And this is one big misconception I'm seeing from a lot of people who are talking about this. This is not a case of, oh, we've seen their game and it looks the same as ours. This is, we hired somebody to make a game, and they then took the work we paid them for, and under contract we own, and then they just went and reskinned it and gave it to another company to use as something else. That is not exactly the same, and of course there are similarities, but that is not the same as just, oh, their game's too similar to ours. It is more than that. It is we hired somebody who made this game and gave it to someone else reskinned, not, oh, we've had a look at their game and it looks a bit similar to ours. That is not the same thing. Although obviously there are, things in common between the two, but this is a lot more than just their game looks similar to ours. Now, for those of you that don't know, although I've mentioned it a few times, I have a background in law. I did my degree in law, and I spent, before I turned full-time content creation, I spent 13 years lecturing in law. I know law. I will not be giving an opinion on the likely success of this case. Because, firstly, I know UK law, I don't know Californian law. And secondly, even if I did know Californian law, I've read the initial complaint, of course I have. That does not give you anywhere near enough information. Like, as a nice little example, obviously this whole case is based around the fact that Ryan Miller allegedly, and to be clear, nothing in this has been proven, this is all alleged, even if I forget to say it, it is alleged, none of this is proven, but Ryan Miller allegedly breached his contract with Upper Deck and took the game he designed for them to Ravensburger. But the complaint doesn't have a copy of the contract. This whole case is about this new game coming from Upper Deck, whose name completely escapes me for the moment, Rush of a Core. But we don't have the comprehensive rules. We'll go through in a minute. There are some rules that they mention. We have no card images. We have no comprehensive rules. We haven't seen the contract between Ryan Miller and Upper Deck. There are very, very, very few people who can actually give a proper determination of the likelihood of success here. You would need to be an expert on the Californian laws in question, because the case is being filed in California, and you would need to have access to all of the documents, like the contract that Ryan Miller had with Upper Deck, like the rules of this new game, etc., etc., etc. And if you notice, I've seen a bunch of people who actually know law commenting on this, and they're all saying similar things to me, which is essentially, we don't have enough information. But what I am seeing from a lot of people is, there is potentially something here. That does not mean Upper Deck are going to win the case, but it means it is not necessarily completely frivolous. Again, I am not in a position to make that statement, but that is what I'm seeing some people saying. But there are a bunch of people out there who have no background in law, who are woefully ignorant of the facts of the case, as we all are for the reasons I've just outlined, who are actually trying to give opinions as to the likely success of this, and that's ridiculous. But I think there is one huge problem, one huge issue that everybody I'm seeing commenting is missing here, at least other than law people. The eventual success or failure of the case is not the big issue right now. The big issue is whether there's going to be a temporary injunction. Now, an injunction is one of the things that they're actually going for here. Basically, what they're going for is damages, that is to say, money for harm caused, injunctive relief, that is to stop them releasing Lorcana, and then blah, 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 blah. But basically, an injunction is a legal demand to stop doing something. And that's what they're trying to get here. They are trying to get an injunction to stop Ravensburger releasing Lorcana. Now, I've seen a bunch of people say, like, oh, why would they even bother doing this? Because they've got a very similar game that they're trying to launch, and launching it after a popular game with a Disney license with the same rules would be a bad thing. That's if the rules are the same. We don't know that yet. But that's down the road. That is, if there's a jury trial and if Upper Deck win, then they want an injunction to stop Lorcana releasing. Well, Lorcana's coming, guys. Lorcana's coming in a couple of months. There is no way, and I don't know Californian law as an expert, obviously, but I'm not sure there's any way there's going to be a full jury trial with appeals, etc., in the next 2 months. That is very unlikely. What is important is there could be a temporary injunction. Because obviously, if this case goes to court, there is no point in it going to court, and after a year or two of Lorcana making loads of money, then an injunction is granted. So what's going to be looked for here is a temporary injunction to stop the game releasing while the court case goes on. And that is the important point right now. And I'm seeing all these people with no law background trying to give opinions on this, and I have not seen one of them talking about the possibility of a temporary injunction. And that is the huge issue right now. Now, essentially, for that to happen, and again, not an expert on Californian law, let's be perfectly clear, but essentially, in order for that to happen, what we'd be looking for is the case going to court and the judge granting a temporary injunction while the case was going on to essentially stop further harm being done. I don't know what the likelihood of this is. I am not in a position to do so, and as I've mentioned in this video multiple times, very, 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 very few people in the world are. But it is very important to note that that is a possibility. How possible? Don't know. But that is a possibility. And that means that all of these events going on at Gen Con, etc., might end up not happening. And the release might end up being delayed. And again, I don't have access to this, and everyone that does is under NDA, so no one's going to talk. But there is a licensing agreement with Disney here. Does that licensing agreement run out if the game is not published by a certain date? Maybe. Is there a possibility that a temporary injunction could last so long that the game isn't launched in time before the license expires? I don't know. But this is a possibility, and I'm seeing everybody talking about Upper Deck's chances of winning in the long run, and that is obviously an important question. But the really important question in the short term is, could there be a temporary injunction which temporarily stops the release of the game? And that is a possibility. And injunctions exist for a reason, because, as I've mentioned, there is absolutely no point a case like this going to court while Ravensburger are making loads of money with Lorcana and building up their brand, if it turns out that this complaint is true. And again, we do not know if that is the case or not. Now, a lot of people have gone and honed in here on the rules, and there are some details given about the rules which give some indication here that the games are fairly similar in terms of the rules. But of course, there are, and I will pop a link to the entire complaint in the description so you can go and read it yourself, but essentially, it is important to note that some of these rules are kind of similar. But then again, there's kind of a limit here. To play, each player needs cards which are purchased from Upper Deck. The player uses purchase cards to strategically build a deck of 40 cards. There can be no more than 3 identical cards in a deck. The deck can only contain 2 colours of cards. There are 4 colours to select from. Well, okay, there are 6 inks in Lorcana, but then again, there are 6 colours in Battle Spirit Saga, or there will be time we get to set free. 40 card decks aren't unique. 3 copies of a card isn't unique. We see that in Final Fantasy. There are 5 types of cards: champions, locations, spells, avatars, and overlays. But do they really sound that unique from regular trading card games? No. There are abilities, like elusive, for instance, which is a thing we see in Lorcana. But then again, elusive, i.e. you can't be attacked except for a character that has elusive, does that really sound particularly unique? I'd suggest not. I've not played every card game in the world ever, but this sounds like the kind of thing we would have. With a deck built and in hand at the outset of the game, each player or team takes on the role of an avatar of a god from an ancient culture, such as Greece or Maya. Okay, that sounds like Archons in Keyforge, I'll be honest with you. To start the gameplay, players draw the top 5 cards of the deck, so you draw an opening hand. That's pretty standard. When it is your turn, a player will draw an additional card. That happens in basically every card game. Now, you may play a card directly to the influence zone. This is basically your resource pool where you play a card down to use in the same way as an inkwell in Lorcana. This is where it does start getting a little coincidental for me, and again, I am not giving any opinion on how likely or not this is to succeed. I do not have access to all the relevant information, and might I suggest, I'm pretty sure none of you guys do either. I'm just saying that this is the first thing here which really starts to sound like Lorcana. And then there is a main phase with attacking and raiding. The thing is, raiding does sound an awful lot like forging. What's the word I'm looking for? Reaping. Reaping in Keyforge. So, yeah. I'm not sure how much of this is unique, but again, it's not necessarily that each individual mechanic is unique. It is that when you put it all side by side, it basically is very, very much like what Ryan Miller designed for Upper Deck. We don't know. The point of this video, as I said earlier, was never to try and determine how likely it is to succeed. We aren't going to determine that. We don't have the information. The point was to explain what's happening, why it's happening, and to kind of let you guys know the big issue in the short term isn't how likely Upper Deck is to win the case. The big issue in the short term is, could there be a temporary injunction while the case goes to trial? Because if there is, that is what I'm looking for in the short term. For now, I'd love to hear your comments about this, but please do remember, law is a complicated issue. You need to have real specifics of Californian law here, and we are all missing a lot of very relevant information, so I don't think we're really in a position to start making judgments about how likely it is to succeed. Right, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's going on. Now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me your thoughts on Lorcana. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi. That's where we talk about a bunch of card games like Lorcana. And to be fair, if this cool game does come out, I might follow that one as well. It sounds kind of interesting. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.